Hello and welcome to another Daily Muppet. In this video, we are returning back to the PowerPoints of the past in order to look at, for real, what United are doing in the short and long term. One of the things I've tried to explain is that United's planning structure for rebuilding the team, the summer window, all of that is not really approached as this is a summer window. This is the window. What are the three things we want to get done? What is this? This started last year with Ineos coming in and the way that they approach the whole plan with Wilcox, with Omar, with everybody involved. What was done right from the beginning is to take a look at the squad and say, what is our assessment? Where is it at? Where does it need to be? What is everything that we need to do? What are all the traits that we are lacking? And what are the players that we're going to need to get it in order to finish the squad? So when they talk about a plan 150 or, title charge in 2028, really what they are talking about is how do we finish the squad fully so that we have enough options, rotations, players of quality that meet what we want in the long term, and how do we get there so that there's enough time for the team to play together under a directed system and strategy in order to accomplish that. Then, of course, the job of the manager coming in is to continue to assess the squad itself, talk about, are their players good enough? Maybe we need to do more. Who does fit into this in the long term and who doesn't, and provide extra consensus on that basis. But the overall plan is, since they came in, to look at everything, all the transfers that are needed in order from top to bottom. And in the end, it's like 15, 16 players, right? Pretty much a full rebuild of the squad over the span of a few years. And that's what I want to look at. Is obviously United have made it through a chunk of that progress once Brian Mbeumo comes in, which we don't expect to be an issue, but they will approach. They have talks started this week, and that is something that should get done fairly quickly. What is the remaining part of the main plan in order to actually finish the squad, and when is it possible to actually do it, and what are they likely to do this summer? So that's what I want to get into, and that's what I want to look at overall. So this is Manchester United's transfer strategy, the bigger picture, what comes next, where, and when. So taking a look at it, the core strategy is United's transfer plan is already defined. They know what positions need strengthening. The plan is not dependent on, on selling to make the right additions, meaning, you're not just like sell to buy. Oh, we have to sell a 6 to buy a 6. We have to sell a 10 to buy a 10. It's not how it works. As you can see, we're trying to move out forwards, but we're already buying players for those positions. And of course, there's a sensibility in saying, if there's players in positions that aren't good enough, you're going to sell them to buy. But it's not always sell a 9 to buy a 9, sell a 10 to buy a 10. There's an order that they want to move things through kind of regardless. Sales are critical to bring the financial balance and allow the full execution of the plan. So the point there is, what are sales doing? They're freeing up wages and bringing money into the club more than they are, we need a 6 gone to get a 6. We need a center back gone to get a center back coming in. The financial discipline aspect is really important. Sales will help United stay within the PSR rules, so that they don't have a bloated squad of players that are not playing but collecting big wages, and will allow them to spend where they need to spend. Selling smart helps fund more ambitious moves next summer too. Not everything that we do is going to be this summer. Leaving ourselves some room in PSR and financially where we can make moves in January, where we can make moves next summer, is going to be a really important part of our overall strategy right now. And as well, keeping wages to a minimum, right? Keeping it disciplined on this front. In the past, we've broken that structure before we've won anything, giving players 200, 350,000, 400,000, 300,000, giving out huge wages to players when we haven't won anything. Even when you win something, you have to be careful with the wages. There's a kind of a famous video that I remember, anyways, of Omar and at talking at City about how, whenever they win, then the players think that they can get a big bump in wages and they have to be disciplined about that, giving them some increase, but keeping it still reasonable. But when you aren't winning, you certainly can't be giving out huge wages to players. So they have to be disciplined with everybody. So when Ahmad got a new contract at a reasonable level, because it affects Kabi Mainu and, it affects how that goes. So that is a huge important part of keeping it costs controlled so that they're never in a situation where they have to sell players they want to keep. The squad doesn't have to be finished this summer. This is one of the things that I noted just in kind of conversations and where I see a little bit of like panic over certain things and certain directions that we might be going. I see people look at it and say, well, what the hell? We still need this. We still need this. This isn't finished. It's not going to be finished because that is essentially how United have made mistakes in the past, and how you can make errors is thinking we have to finish everything in one summer. We have to finish everything in one window. So then you're rushing to buy the only available player for this position or the only available player for that position, or you're spending too much or too little, and then you're not buying right and you're buying twice, and then you're still trying to finish it next season, and you have waste of money and just enormous amounts of financial squalor. So the squad won't be finished this summer. We're going to go into next season with a team that isn't ideal, where we know, hey, we probably need a couple players in these positions. So what? That's part of what it means to be in a rebuild, that you're going to be short at times, but that it is within the long-term strategy to make sure you get the right people and the right assessments. We'll see more outs than ins and a smaller squad to operate with as well. So I posted this funny graphic that I made the other day to try to show like where are we going through the plan right now, and really, really basic, the big picture. Now showing like, look, Brian Mbumo, you have the money for him, you get him done. Then after that, you have the more money you raise, the further along you move through the plan. And it really is kind of that simple. In really, really simple terms, the further along you go, the more money you raise, the further you move through the plan. That's how it's been since last summer. So we're moving through the plan now. And whatever we don't get done this summer is going to be our major targets for next summer. One to the next as the budget goes. So it's pretty simple. The first priority that's remaining at the moment then is still the number 9. A number 9 who can run in behind, win duels, and score consistently. Crazy stuff to ask your number 9 to do that. Fits the modern kind of press and transition style. Amarim's tactics are not all slow build-up. There's a lot of being able to bypass the buildup. There's a lot of being able to run into the channels. There's a lot of being able to manufacture transitions and things like that too. So the running aspect is important, but also, being able to press really high and sustain attacks in the attacking half, in the opponent's final third, and score quickly off of, attacks is important as well. This is obviously a key piece to unlock the attack. The top target is Gyökeres. I've been over that many times, expected to be 55 million or so. In order to afford him, we're going to need to move Garnacho, or likely Rashford plus Antony or the equivalent, to unlock the funds for this kinds of position. Obviously, then we'll see, can we even get him? But we do need to unlock the funds for this, and it's probably going to stay quiet until we have the ability to spend it. The next in line is a box-to-box 8. This is another one that's been on the priority list for a while. They need to be able to cover ground. They need to definitely be able to join the attack, and they need to be very physical and very athletic. It may not seem that urgent now, because we were talking about, of course, well, if Bruno is staying and we're getting Bumo and we're getting Cunha, then Bruno becomes a midfielder. So do we really need an 8 right now? Is that really the priority? And it may not seem urgent, but it's actually quite crucial to the long-term overall plan with Champions League or multiple competitions, and adds depth to the 10 as well. The top target, maybe it's Ederson. We don't really know. There's been no solid approaches as of yet, so we know that it's not necessarily anywhere close, because the departures in the midfield are going to be necessary in order to get this done. Even still, because we have so many players between the two positions in the midfield, between Bruno and Mainu and Collier and Ugarte and Casemiro, and maybe even youth players like Kone, Thwaites. Like, there's a lot of players across the board that could come into this and be involved. Unless, and this is maybe the indication of this, is that this is where Vavell comes in and we're moving towards, let's get somebody young. And if we were going to get somebody young, now would be the right time to do that for that athletic box to box eight. So it's about preparing for the future. If we purchase of an eight over a six, due to Casemiro, Ugarte, Collier all being more than capable for one game a week at the six, this will also mean Bruno can flex between the 8 and the 10, which he's likely to do to allow for rotation and injuries without massive drop off in quality. And when we get into multiple competitions, it'll become even more vital. I mean, if you look at this, even if we get our Gyökeres and we've got these guys in the 10s, which is brilliant, well, what happens when Cunha doesn't play? Mason Mount hasn't been reliable. Kabi Mainu hasn't totally nailed down his place. You would hope Ahmad can stay out wide as much as possible. So you need a flexibility of options. And one of the things that Ruben Amorim does really like is players having the ability to flex between a couple different positions, like right 10 and right wing back and center back. The 8 and the 10s, because this 8 is supposed to be an attacker and get really involved in the attack so that you have enough attacking players coming through to score goals. So Bruno could easily flex up when Cunha is taking a break, giving you that somebody else to use here. And it's definitely necessary to maintain attacking quality, because that's the biggest factor that they found, is that what happens, you have one injury, does your attack go back to being poor? You know, what happens? We want to make sure that we always have the quality up front to score goals. And sometimes you do that, you know, by taking one of your better attackers and saying, yeah, he's not necessarily just an 8, and he's not even necessarily better as an 8, but because of the qualities that he brings to the table. So if we can get an 8 and flex him, then it's probably better for the short and long term than buying another 10 in the backup. Like, because that way you're not specifically buying a backup. You might be buying an 8 who could become a starting player that can push. And that's the right way to look at it. You want to buy players who can become starters. You don't want to buy depth for the sake of depth. So that's really the idea here. The more that can be done now, the advantage is the easier it is to bet in these players without pressure on their first season. If we get an 8 now while Bruno is still there and we have these starters in other positions, they don't have to be an immediate starter. They can get time. They won't get the same level of criticism that people usually do. And we're in a season of, you know, somewhat rebuild and transition. The long-term view is also you have a replacement for Bruno. You know, Bruno being at his age and all of that, that means you want someone ideally starter quality so that Bruno, as he gets older, becomes a 10, an 8, a depth option between the two, a rotational piece, gets to rest, you know, and you're not necessarily needing to rely on him for everything. So this player could potentially be less ready today. That means a younger option is in the thinking, which is why we haven't really heard about so many names as of yet. Because realistically, the best option here, given what we're doing, and given the fact that Bruno is staying, and given the fact that Bruno is starting, is to get somebody young, who can develop into that role alongside potentially, you know, Kavi Mainu as well. So we'll see there. Further targets that could be addressed: goalkeeper. A long-term upgrade is wanted. You want competition for Onana right now to earn their place. Lamens, younger, Vanya, older. Definitely that's something that ideally would be addressed now. A central center back. Starter is needed there. Maguire will go at some point soon, and next summer, I presume. And De Ligt has not nailed that spot on as a starter, but we have both of them competently for this year. We will very much likely be in the market for a starting center back next summer, almost 100%. We will be in the market for starting center back next summer. We were going to be in the market for one this summer, but the breakthrough of Aiden Heaven after Lissandro's injury has helped that a hell of a lot, as has the progress with Lenny Yoro and such. So we'll have the flexibility here. Realistically, with one competition next summer, this will be a major target where we could look to somebody who's the long-term center back in this team. And then in number 6, obviously, we may need a starter. It's going to be pending Ugarte's second season. How does that go? Once Casemiro departs after this final year of his contract. then they'll look at that and say, okay, that's probably a position where we would go for somebody who we might need somebody to come in as a starter to push Ugarte to depth at that point in time. We'll see how the season goes. The order of these signings can change based on special opportunities, outgoings, and serious injury, but not by much. The overall squad plan is expected to complete in 2026. This gives you 2 seasons till the expected title competition and puts United on track. And I mean that quite seriously. If you look at it, if they get that striker in and they can get one more thing done on the plan this summer, maybe it's the goalkeeper, maybe it's the 8, we'll see. Then, you keep working through these players as long as you don't have a big failure rate on your signings, which will throw off any plan. Then by next summer, you get your center back, you get another number 6, and you still have space should you need to make another signing or two at that point in time, especially if we can get back into Europe, for if a position didn't work out or something didn't go as planned, then you can address that. And from there forward, you're really just more like fixing issues before they become issues rather than constantly being behind 2 or 3 positions where we just don't have a player at all. So it makes it on track, and then you're giving them time to play together to get towards that title competition. That's how it's supposed to go. This isn't a random thing. This isn't outs then ins. It's not haphazard. It's not out of control. It is the structured rebuild that started last summer, even if it was maybe derailed a little bit with the whole manager kerfluffle. The targets are all in line with financial control and the expected departures, not just now, but knowing who's expected to leave next year, who's expected the following year. And the squad evolution is in line with a clear tactical plan. And this is the important part. All of the targets fit in multiple formations. Doesn't matter, 3-4-3, 4-3-3, whatever. But they follow precise characteristics highly related to physicality, athleticism, and quality. That's what they want in it. So there is a clear plan here. There is something that makes a lot of sense with all of this. I think it's a really obvious direct line towards where we want to go, where we want to be, and how we get there in the long run. It's hard to sometimes describe like the difference between the planning before. It's hard to see that. It's hard to look at how we used to do it versus now. And in the past, it was always like, get a big name in X position that will hopefully improve things. And it was like, and every other position is fine. No. These are the 3 positions we're going for this summer. No, it was, these are all the problems in the squad. These are their order of importance, and we're moving through them sequentially in order to solve the overall squad. And there's no limit. I spoke about this last summer. It's unlimited transfers. So it means if you have the money, you do it. Now, are we expecting to have the money? No, probably not, because we won't have the money to finish everything. If we'd sold Bruno, for example, could you technically have maybe finished the team this summer? Yes, but at the same time, the downsides to that are, you're taking big risks in making all those deals this summer in case some of them don't work out, where, and spending all your money. So, there's 2 ways to look at it. That was why they would have asked for so much money, is that sure, if Bruno goes, we have to replace him. But how that might change, well, we might need an 8 who's more ready, and that's a bigger risk than a young one who can develop a bit more, a young athletic 8 who can develop a bit more, and things like that. But, regardless, it is a good overall long-term plan that they're headed down to finish it. And as far as I gather it, look, they're not really expecting to be behind on the overall projections and targets and where they want to be. But these things have to work. And this is the season where everybody has to make their bread, where everybody has to prove it with this plan that it works, that the signings we make it work out, that the signings we got from last summer. And personally, I think the ones from last summer mostly got all better and better and better. And by the end of the season, I consider a lot of them to be a bit of a success, but especially I think in next year, in their second season, most of them should be expected to improve. And the ones we make this summer should come in, and the ones who are coming from the Premier League should come in and hit the ground running. And with one competition a week and all that, it's a real opportunity for the club to build. And if it's done right, the core of the team that is being built is all between like 22 and 28 years old. And you're not in a 21 even and 28 years old, and you're not in a situation where the core of the team is going to experience any huge drop off due to age and things like we've seen so many times before, where it was around Matic and then Matic was getting too old, and it was around this and that player's getting too old, and you know, those types of situations that we saw time and time again. So that's the biggest thing here, and I'm very excited to see it happen. So let's see what they follow through on their plans now. But I just wanted to kind of give an explanation of how they're moving forward in the window for the questions like what's actually happening next. Well, it's the same plan as ever, just moving through it in the long term, for sure. So the money and the outs is the biggest problem at the moment through moving forward with the plan, and that's the only thing that can really derail it. If we can't shed some of these players, if we can't move them out, if we can't get rid, then we'll be able to do less now, and it'll require more later. And obviously that makes it a little more difficult through the season as well if you don't have all the players that you want. So that's what I have for this video. I'll probably do a live later just to keep up to date on any further developments, but I wanted to just refocus, reassess, look at where we are, and move forward from there. Okay, thanks for watching. Thank you to all the members. Thank you to everybody who follows and views the channel. It's been huge this last week. Huge. Absolutely amazing stuff. So thank you very much. I appreciate you all. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and ring the bell to turn notifications on for the next video. See you later. Have a good one.